So Mike Florio just revealed a little bit of information. And I'm going to tell you right now, this is what's going to happen over the next couple months. We're going to get a lot of info from the Bengals side, but not directly from the Bengals. We're going to start hearing some things from, leaked sources that are very credible, like we heard so far from Jay Morrison. We heard from Danielle Rossini. We heard from Ian Rappaport. We're going to hear some leaked, and I say quote-unquote leaked sources, because this is now getting to a point where it's a very toxic back-and-forth relationship. And this is just how it's going to be. So we're going to find out more and more information about what the Bengals offered Trey Hendrickson and all the information about what they offered him. Because Trey has gone public, has said his piece to the media, to, ESPN during practice. And the Bengals, while they're not going to directly come out and say, yeah, this is what we offered him, this is what's happening, they're going to tell these reporters, hey, put it out there. Just let them know. Just let the fans know, because we're not going back and forth with this. So according to Mike Florio, obviously, Trey Hendrickson is due $16 million this year. Little side note, he is due $16 million. I realize, so he is, the 18.66 cap hit is actually including his signing bonus, which he gets his signing bonus at the very beginning when he first signed his extension, but it was prorated over 5 years. So technically he is not, he's not getting that money this year. He already got that money. So technically, physical dollar amount, he's getting $16 million this year. Obviously, with the signing bonus, he's getting 18.66, but that's prorated, meaning he already got the money. So the extra money he already has. Anyway, he says the Bengals, we have heard, have offered him $28 million per year. That's kind of where we're hearing 28 to 30. So it seems like 28 is kind of the magic number of what we offered him. Whatever the amount is, and importantly, the structure, he wants more. Which, again, we already know. He, not only does he, based on what he has said, the Bengals are trying to offer him a short-term contract. So they're trying to offer him like a 2-3 year deal for $28 million per year, and he wants longer term. Like, he wants 4 or 5 years. He doesn't want just 1 or 2 years. He wants a long-term contract. And he also wants more than $28 million per year. Right now, the rumor is he wants 32 to 35, with most reports saying he wants 35. So, he wants 35 a year and probably a 4 or 5 year contract, which would put him at 35, around 35 years old, 36 years old when his contract would expire. Obviously, the Bengals are looking at it as a couple different points. Do they believe that he can stay healthy throughout the next 4 or 5 years? Is he worth the money? Obviously, blase, whatever. Here's the thing that's interesting, because this stuff isn't really new. He had a chance to get it when the team gave him permission to seek a trade. The two, that went nowhere, because no one was willing to give him what he wants, especially if they would also have to give the Bengals something in return. But this is very, very important. They weren't willing to give him the contract he wanted. Now, obviously, yes, also with the fact of trading, but I'm sure there was some teams that were willing to at least play ball with the Bengals in a trade scenario, but they weren't willing to give him the contract he wanted. Because again, if he wants 35 a year for 5 years, teams are going to look at it and say, okay, well, you're not going to be that good in the run support. You're only a pass rusher. We have to, keep that in mind, and that's obviously not going to be like a Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Max Crosby. So that's very interesting, because I haven't heard that scenario yet. I've heard teams weren't willing to give the Bengals a first round pick, But a lot of reports have been that they were willing to give him what he wanted. Like, they were going to give him the contract he wanted as long as the Bengals were willing to trade him to their said club. Looks like that's not the case. And the real report here is that they weren't even willing to give him what he wanted. Now, this completely changes the ball game completely. Because if he hits, obviously, he goes out there, tries to get other teams interested, and no one's willing to give him $35 a year for that 4 year, let's just hypothetically speaking, 4 year, $35 million a year. No one's willing to give him that. He has less leverage coming back to the Bengals even more than before. Because now the Bengals are going to say, okay, well, you went out there, you wanted this amount of money, nobody wanted to give it to you. Now, obviously, he's going to say, well, because they had to trade, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, they weren't willing to give him the contract. So that means he's worth even less to the Bengals because, well, less than what he wanted to the Bengals because he went out there, tried to get his dollar amount, and was not able to. Now, again, at the end of the day, this is all leaked sources, quote unquote. But again, this is just putting more putting more pieces together. And we're going to find out more pieces as we go throughout this offseason. I hope he signs. And I think that we just need to get him signed and get this crap over with. But again, it's if we did offer him $28 million, which I now kind of fully believe we did. It's one of those things where, and I said this many times, I know I'm not trying to repeat myself every video, but is it worth it? If he'll take 32, is it worth it to do all this crap for $4 million? Probably not. Now, if he wants, an extra 7 a year and he wants 35, then maybe that's also a thing. It also seems like, again, the Bengals only want to offer him like a 2-3 year deal. They want a short-term deal. They don't want a long-term deal. And it kind of does make sense from the aspect of, yes, Trey is great. Yes, Trey's amazing. But locking a player in this long-term could be a problem. We saw with the situation with Geno Atkins. We gave him a 4-year contract for $70-odd million. He retires after 2 years. And, Trey last year, when the contract situation was going back and forth, he threatened to retire. And, I mean, again, these are things that the Bengals are going to keep in mind, is that if he threatens to retire because he doesn't get the contract he wants, you're now saying we have to lock him in for 4 or 5 years. That's going to be a kind of weird conversation to have. You don't really lock in a player for 4 or 5 years who already threatened to retire if he doesn't get a contract, and now is threatening to sit out. So Trey has no leverage, and that's pretty much what this comes down to. If teams aren't interested in paying him what he wants, though, then here's what I'll say, right? I'm assuming teams aren't willing to pay him 35. They're probably willing to pay him 32. So that's why this conversation is still going. Because if they weren't willing to pay him 32 or 35, then this conversation is stupid, right? This conversation is idiotic. This is now just called greed. Because at this point, it's like if no one's willing to pay you the money you want, and you keep fighting for that number, well, you could fight against a brick wall because you're not going anywhere. So it's a mess. It's a mess. But interesting to hear that teams aren't willing to pay him the dollar amount he wants. Because, yeah. And again, plus the trade. Because the Bengals apparently wanted a first-round pick. Which, again, I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. But if you telling me, right, and I'm an organization, saying, hey, listen, you trade me a first-round pick, right? And this, again, it's not a top 10 pick we're talking about. Could be a latter half of the league pick. Let's say, I don't know, well, we wouldn't trade to the Chiefs, but let's say the Rams, okay? The Rams are a playoff team. They're most likely this upcoming season going to have a pick anywhere from arguably 26 to 32. Okay, I don't think they're going to win a Super Bowl, but let's say they did, right? they could trade us their first round pick, which if they have a great season, and with Trey Hendrickson, they would, they're going to give us a 28th, 29th pick. That's glorified a second round pick almost. You're given a glorified second round pick, and then you also are just giving him the contract you want to give him. This is why, again, even with the circumstance of people like, oh, well, the Bengals are asking for too much. We're really not. Because, again, we're just asking for a first. We're not asking for 2 firsts, 3 firsts, 4 firsts. We're asking for 1 first, which could be considered a glorified second if you really think about it. There's some, again, this is why it's like, if you want someone and you think someone's so good enough, this guy is so good, I'll give him a $35 million a year contract or a 32, whatever. Why would you not give up a first round pick? Right? Because you're like, okay, well, I'm going to give a first round pick, but I'm getting someone who I know, whoever I draft in that first round, if I'm latter half of this first round and I'm on the second round, I'm getting someone who's good enough to be better than that guy and who I have on the roster right now. And yes, I have to pay him a lot of money, but he's worth the money. This is a circumstance, and I think this goes with life in general. People like to talk, but they don't like to put the money where their mouth is. Everything changes when you have to put the money where your mouth is. Because when you talk is cheap, money is real. Green is real. And when you have to sign that contract, that's when things get real. And I don't know. I'm starting to think talking cheap on this one. But see you guys next one, though. Peace.